Are you guys ready? All right. Well, welcome. Thank you guys for having me. We're going to have an interesting talk today about how to be a hacker. Now, this is going to be more of an introduction to offensive security. By a show of hands, how many of you guys are either in InfoSec or studying to be an InfoSec? Okay. How many of you guys are generally just in IT? Oh, wow. Okay. How many of you are students and very undecided right now? One undecided student. Great. You guys all have your lives together. I love it. So we're going to kind of run through a couple things. Some of this you guys will know. Some of this may be new. And we're just going to kind of cover the concepts of what it is to be a hacker. So first, just a little bit about me. I appreciate the Armenian community taking me in and flying me all the way from America. I'm a hacker that has been doing offensive security for about 20 years professionally. I'm a co-host on a global podcast. We've had a podcast for the last 15 years, 16 years now. It's all about security, IT, business, so not just on hacking. So definitely check it out, Security Weekly. I've been doing red teaming, which we'll kind of cover that concept. This may be new to a lot of people, but very, very offensive hacker mindset of breaking into buildings in a very stealthy manner. That's kind of a red team. That's been the shift and focus of the industry, is to start labeling everything with a color. So we'll kind of cover some of that in a minute. What I really specialize in, physical access, ICS, SCADA, so industrial controls, things that make water go, or nuclear power plants that run power, things that are important. I teach at many conferences. I speak at many conferences. Black Hat, we teach the Exploiting ICS. I do keynote speaking, yada yada. All that's kind of just lame. That's about me. Let's get into the fun stuff. So what are we going to learn about today? We're going to kind of cover what offensive security is, what hacking is. It's got a negative connotation over many years because the media has kind of labeled what hacking is. So I'm going to kind of cover what we believe hacking is. And then I'm going to tell a couple stories. We'll get into different types of hacking and maybe see if I can convince some of you to go into that field after you've done your time in IT and served your community. And then we'll kind of do a couple demos. I'm going to try and fit within inside of 30 minutes, so we'll see how fast I can go, and we'll try and get to all the demos. So what is offensive security? Most of you know offensive security as the guys that come in and hack all the stuff and leave you a report and a lot of work to do, right? That's traditionally what we've kind of labeled that. Really, offensive security is very broad in that it looks at all the aspects of a company and its business risk, and it takes that business risk and allows them to make a decision on it. That's really, at a nutshell, that's what offensive security's job is. That's what we're, by design, meant to be doing. And so that can be anything from testing applications to testing hardware, testing physical access, network access, configuration. The concept of offensive security is really designed to take the adversary's mindset or the threats that are going to come against you in whatever environment you're running and make sure that it's secure, it's deployed secure, it's coded secure, whatever that means. The offensive side of that is just taking the mindset of the attacker and really trying to figure out what is the risk of a particular application. So there's a lot of different types of offensive security. Typically when you're talking in the industry, you'll hear penetration testing, you'll hear vulnerability scanning, you'll hear ethical hacking, white hat hacking. You'll hear a number of colors, red team, blue team, purple team. All of the colors kind of mean something. So really when we're talking about hacking and we're talking about offensive security, each of these has a very specific purpose. And one of the problems that the industry has currently is they've tried to lump all of that into a single kind of term. Offensive security, a pen test gets confused with the vulnerability scan, which gets confused with a web app test. All of these things get confusing. So each of them has a very specific purpose. And once you kind of figure those out, if you can really understand what the purpose is and label them appropriately and not just broadly, then you can focus and you can really understand what they're meant to do. There's a very specific purpose for vulnerability scans. You're using an application to look for as many vulnerabilities as possible in an automated fashion. That's not going to make you more secure from an adversary standpoint because the adversary is going to find vulnerabilities that a vulnerability scan is not going to find. You have a human behind it. You have creativity. You have unknowns. So really getting some of those kind of figured out. Now, one of the key words here, this is not a term I typically use a ton, but when we start to talk about hackers, we really do have to be careful of the label. Ethical is an important part of what this job is in offensive security. Really making sure that you understand you need to be authorized. You need to have the appropriate contracts in place, the scope. You have a lot of power once you learn how to do offensive security. And even in IT, you have a lot of power. You know how systems work. You know how you can kind of manipulate them a little bit. So we really have a calling to be very, very ethical when we're given that kind of power and that kind of knowledge. So that's one of the big things that a lot of kids trying to get into hacking are like, oh, I can hack into anything. I can get into my girlfriend's Facebook. You know, you have all this power. But once you start to get into this field, you really do have to set aside and make sure that your moral compass and ethics are within order. Otherwise, this is not the field for you. So what is a hacker? Really, I think everybody in this room, because they've been in IT in some form or fashion, is a hacker. Now, you don't have to be in IT to be a hacker, because the mindset of a hacker is one that is curious and tenacious and is always trying to solve a problem or not take something at face value. So someone tells you that you can't get into your hotel room at 6 a.m., you know, the normal person's like, well, geez, I guess we'll have to call or we'll have to wait. A hacker's trying to figure out, like, yeah, I can see I can do something interesting. You go outside the bounds of the box, and you really are just able to be curious and push the envelope a little bit of what is being told to you. So what is your reality? And there are a lot of people that are not hackers that do the same thing in a day-to-day life. People that do marketing, for example. They find ways around the system. They are, you know, you can only send 500 emails and you have so many lead generations. Well, they figure out a way around that, and they figure out how to get more leads, and they kind of hack the system. So being a hacker, really trying to take back that term, is one of our big goals. The media is labeled hackers, the people deploying ransomware, the people that are breaking systems, causing harm and millions of dollars in different ransoms or different hacking escapades. That's a criminal. So really trying to, as you move forward in your careers, if you don't take anything out of this talk other than make sure you label hackers correctly and try and take back the term of what it is to be a hacker, and label criminals as criminals. If they're not authorized, if they're doing crime, if they're hurting people, that's a criminal. That's not a hacker. So when I started doing hacking many, many years ago, what I really thought hacking was going to be is just a bunch of hacking. I live in a basement. I get to code all day. I get to break into everything, make a lot of money. That's more and more not true as I go down. And I'll show you kind of what I mean there. So in reality, to get to the part where you're in offensive security and you really want to be a hacker, it takes a ton of work. You really are spending a ton of time learning things outside of computer security. You have a ton of time and work and energy you'll have to put into understanding protocols, understanding networks, computers, hardware, all the different business aspects, applications. All of those things are important, but the things as you get into this space and you start to do engagements, you start to consult and professionally do this, some of the things I didn't realize and is actually way more important, especially for you who are still in school, is learning some of the things, such as communication. In fact, I have 2 bullets of communication there because it is such a big aspect. As you're moving forward in your career, really understanding how to articulate business language and talk to executives and really understand how a business is laid out, how it's making money, understanding different verticals and marketing. And then writing. Writing is a huge part of this, which I didn't know because I really didn't like to write all that much. But you spend a great deal of time being a technical writer, and you have to articulate what you're trying to say on paper in a snapshot, in the most concise manner, and that is very, very difficult. So you have to be able to articulate and communicate, and you have to be able to write it down in a meaningful manner so that it actually gets digested and people do something with it. So those are things to think about if you are still in school and you're trying to find some extra courses. Technical writing, take some communication classes, take some marketing and business classes to really understand how that works. And then you're going to spend a ton of hours. I'm just going to tell you this is not an 8 to 5 job, so if that's what you're after, you will never have that in the offensive security space. You will be spending many, many hours well outside of your pay time and your work. So If that's for you and you really enjoy doing this, then start to think about it. Because you have to enjoy doing this, otherwise this is going to burn you out very, very quickly. So, I will tell you a quick story, since talking about slides and telling you life advice is kind of boring, right? I'll give you a story of some hacking stuff. So this is one of my favorite stories. So we had to go do an engagement, which is breaking into a bank at this point. And as the bank has paid us to come do this very stealthily. So we are authorized to break into this bank. I go to the middle of nowhere, Canada. I don't know if you guys know where Canada's at, but it's up by the North Pole. And it's negative 25 Fahrenheit, which is like negative 30 Celsius or something. It is freezing, literally can't go outside. So we spend all week trying to break into this building, and after we were able to bypass security, we cloned badges from employees there. We got past the elevator using some elevator keys to bypass the badge in access to certain floors. So we do all that and we get upstairs, and it's like 2 in the morning. We're finally in. It took us all night to get into this place. And we realized we hadn't eaten that day. So we're very, very hungry at that point. So what do? We order a little bit of pizza and have it shipped up to the place, the bank in which we're hacked into. We're in the executive's office eating pizza while we're breaking his computer. So we spent all night hacking, and right before the cleaning crew came in, we ended up setting off an alarm on accident getting to a server room. And so we had to get out of there, and we had left all the pizza boxes up there. There was going to be a very confused executive in the morning. So it's just a fun, kind of a fun story of some of the things that offensive security people get to do. It is very, very much not a job to most of us. We love breaking into stuff. We love learning. And if that is something that interests you, then yeah, these kind of stories can always be a part. Now, they're not all that glamorous. They're not all that fun. But there's definitely some fun to be had from offensive security space. So after we did all that, by the way, we ended up getting caught, which is fairly rare considering how much time and development we put into our tooling and what's going on. They were able to see just some commands. They had some very specific rules. They'd done engagements with us for several years, so they'd taken all the advice we actually gave them, and they actually did what we said, which is fairly rare as well. So it was one of those weird things of they actually caught us and we had no idea because we did everything right. So one of the misconceptions you'll kind of hear from the offensive space is, yeah, it's so easy for those red teamers, the offensive people, because they only have to get it right once, right? Like that's a common blue team theme. Like we have a lot to do, we have a lot to secure, which you do. Like the blue team is, I come from sysadmin and that side of defense. That's very, very difficult to do. So hats off to you. However, the misconception of always having to be, or only having to be right once, is definitely not the case. When you're starting to do red team, or you're starting to do penetration testing or offensive security, you really have to understand basically everything that you know in IT, all of the systems, all of the protocol, all the hardware. You have to know end to end between all the environments you're testing. So you have multiple corporations, you're working with basically every vendor out there, and you're trying to break all of those different things. And so in order to break it, you fundamentally have to understand it and know how it's deployed in different arrangements and configurations. So it's a ton of learning, a ton of reading all the time to kind of figure out what is going on, where different things are deployed. And really you have to be right all the time, because one misstep and you actually get caught and you have to start over. So really that misnomer as you move forward, really understand you've got to kind of continue on and keep learning. Anything that you're doing in your IT roles, that's all very valuable if you want to make a shift. In fact, I did 10 years, as I said, as a sysadmin and network admin, and I shifted over to the offensive security space because it was great. I already knew all the systems. I already knew all the shortcuts I took as a lazy admin. I knew where all the dirty laundry was buried. So those are things that are great resources and great value if you're considering switching over to the offensive security space. And one of the mantras that I really also want to impress upon you is, from the offensive security space, our goal is really to make sure that the blue team or the defensive team, the IT teams, are really enabled. The business is enabled and they're protected and they're getting more secure. You'll see a lot of offensive companies come in, just destroy the company, give them a little report, walk away, wash your hands. And they didn't really offer any good advice. That doesn't serve anybody. That's really something that we've seen in the industry for the last 10 years get worse and worse. So really making sure that as an offensive-minded person or someone that wants to be a hacker or a red teamer, those are things that you really need to keep the perspective of, yeah, you always want to win and you want to get in and you want to hack all the things, but you also have to make sure you remember who you're hacking for and what you're trying to teach. You're trying to provide value, secure the company you're hacking, secure the application. If you can keep that in mind, that will really serve you well as far as how you move forward in your career and what companies trust you to do the right thing. Again, if you don't love this field, if you don't love learning, long hours and doing these things, you will not survive. So you have to make sure this is something you love from the offensive security space. I mean, look at my smile. I obviously love doing what I do, and that means I don't really see it as a job. Most of the time they pay me to write reports. I don't like to write reports. I'll break into stuff all day for free. I get paid to write reports is how I see it. So all these things to kind of go over a couple demos, I really wanted to first impress upon you there's a lot to be gained in the offensive security space, and there's a ton of IT practitioners, there's a ton of students that we really need to pull over into the offensive security space because we have a huge gap. There's a lot of engineering, there's a lot of IT happening, there's a lot of people learning that. There's not a ton of people coming over the offensive space. We're about 500,000 people short right now, and that's across just the world in general. So there's a ton of demand for this space. So again, there's a ton of fun to be had, and I urge you to consider looking into the offensive space if you're in IT or a student right now and wanting to move forward in your career. There's a ton of fun to be had. It's a lot of work and there's a lot to do, but let's make that happen because we do need all of you. So I'll show you a quick demo because learning about some life skills. This was a 30-minute presentation, which I didn't know, so I had to switch up a whole bunch of stuff and kind of do this a little different. But I'll show you a quick demo of what hacking actually looks like from like an end user perspective, and I'll show you some of the backside of how we gain access to things and what real hacking looks like. Because a lot of people's perspective that they have for hacking is either word of mouth and it's a word, or they see it in Hollywood and it's got some graphics and it's all cool. It's not quite that glamorous, but this will be kind of fun just to walk through what hacking looks like on the backside. All right, so I'll actually talk through just a little bit of this for a second. What we're going to see here is a typical attack. A lot of ransomware you've seen in the news, maybe a couple oil pipelines, things that are going on around you. This is kind of how some of these happen. This is a very, very unsophisticated hack, and I'm using tools that we'd probably never use on a real engagement, but this is actually how several adversaries have gained access to big networks and breached them to ransom stuff. They're using a macro, which is just something with inside of a Word or Excel document. It's code in the backside of that. And with one button click, I'm going to show you one email and one button click. We have full access to a computer to take screenshots, record video from the webcam, gain all the passwords from anything that lives in memory or the local hashes. We can basically do anything that we could do in front of the computer and more, and the end user is not going to see that. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like. So again, this is one click and one email. So this is some of the email stuff that we do. Obviously, we make it look, this one is, I think, AmazonPurchases.com. We send an invoice, or maybe it was Red Cross. Don't tell them, we're doing this. I like my domain. But this is the victim's machine, just a typical Win7. This is a little older demo. I actually couldn't get to my AWS environment because of ACLs to show you the newer version of this. But we sent a single attachment. We told them, here's your invoice, and please open this document in order to view purchases or something. Oh no, this was the blood. So please sign up for a blood donation. The scheduling form is right there. And let me pause that because that was really fast. So this is the one button. We sent one email, right? We're able to bypass spam filters, spoofing protection, all that. There's a lot of techniques to do that. This is the one button protecting all of your users, protecting your entire computer. This is fully patched antivirus, and we're just using general tools. This one button is usually what the user will see. This is how many ransomware attacks have actually gotten deployed. It's enable content, which just allows a macro to run within inside of that. So when you click the macro, code executes on the backside. This is our backend terminal where we're doing. I set up a interpreter session. I've got a backend. This is our dashboard that has, like, when I get access to a system, it's sending all of its communication over DNS or HTTPS back to server. So that one button, now we have full access. I can take a snapshot. I can run shellcode right here. I'm actually downloading and running shellcode with inside of memory, so nothing is touching a disk. We're leaving very little as far as indicators of compromise or IOCs. And we're going to inject this with inside of memory over the internet. Again, this is all remote. And I've got full communication in an encrypted tunnel back and forth to this host. That one button provides that full access. And it's even gotten better than this. We've got really nice GUIs and UXs, and not everything's command line. Some of it still is, but we're able to do a ton of stuff to back-end devices. And right here, I'm actually deploying two different agents. So this is what we would consider our long-haul server. We get access. We put it on very short callbacks, so it's only calling back once every 10 minutes with like 5 packets, right? Really hard to see on a network trace. We're deploying an interactive beacon where we're able to communicate at high rates over a different communication channel, different websites, and or domain fronting. And we're able to do all of this from this one. So we deploy two agents, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to gain the clear text password using an in-memory Mimikatz, which is a tool to gain the credentials out of memory on your machine. And I'm going to dump the hashes, which is the local passwords to your computers. Usually that's how your admins remote into everything. And so once I get those, I can actually go out to different parts of the network, and I can pivot through each one of those and continue hacking until I get to whatever our end objective and goal is. And so here we've just deployed both of those beacons. And over here again, the user does not see anything. You're not leaving much of a trace. And the two beacons, so this is the one interpreter, this is Cobalt Strike. It's a common tool used by attackers. Both of those are getting spun up and within memory. So I've got all these commands I ran. We got the directory listings. I can see all their files. I can upload and download all their files. Was gaining a couple screenshots, all from the one beacon. I can see the process list, so I know what antivirus is running and what I need to do to bypass it, what applications I need to get to. It's a SQL server if it's something important. And so right now we're just running through that, setting up all the comms and then injecting that into memory. Again, nothing's touching disk here. There's no files. There's no exe to click. Nothing's happening on that side. So this is a lot of it's a very small part of offensive security and hacking, but this is a lot of the kind of stuff you're doing. You're looking through networks. And we just gained access to that box. That's our other callback and a beacon here. And I'm doing a hash dump, and that's where we're gaining those hashes for the local box. And that's all coming back. Boom, we got hashes to the box and the network. Now we're moving on and looking for new targets. So this is just kind of a quick sneak peek of what actually hacking looks like from a work standpoint. There's the clear text password. This is a really awesome password, it's like 20 characters. Even though it's long, if you lose access to a system, I can pull those long passwords right out of memory, and that's obviously a problem. So again, just a quick demo to show you what a small glimpse of offensive security is. The main point I want to kind of impart is make sure that you're considering, even if you've been in IT, you've specialized, you've moved forward, if you're getting burnt out or you're not enjoying your work, you're not enjoying your job anymore, or if you're a student and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, take a look at offensive security. There's a lot of people that are natural hackers. They have the curiosity, they have the brain to kind of think outside of the box. So don't limit yourself to what you know. Everybody thinks you have to be some elite super coder to be a hacker. You don't. Okay, there's ways. It's good to know code. There are ways to do this without that. So don't limit yourself based on what you think you know about a particular industry or offensive security. Really start to come into the field if it's something that interests you. And with that, all the other demos I did not have time for, but I appreciate you guys' time, and come see my talk tomorrow. I'll have a little bit more time to go over a few more things.